the Reverend Canon Arienne Davison, Canon to the Ordinary of the Diocese of Olympia.
And I'm Vikki Haig-Day, the president of the Standing Committee for the Diocese of Olympia.
In July, we learned that Bishop Rickel would be ending his time as Bishop Diocesan of the Diocese of Olympia at the end of the year. And since then, both Vikki and I have fielded a lot of questions about what's happening with the transition. So we wanted to share with you what the Standing Committee has been doing to get ready for this big change, and also let you know ways members of the diocese can prepare for the transition work, particularly that we have to do at our convention, October 21st and 22nd at the CTAC Hilton. So I thought we would frame this conversation up for you to include you more, people who are watching, because this is a conversation and you're going to be a part of a conversation Vikki and I have been having for a little bit now. So I'll ask her some questions and together we'll try and share with you what we know. So Vikki, the bishop resigned and the Standing Committee found that out a little bit before everyone else because you had some extra work to do. And so I know at that moment you're wondering what happens next. And I think you were presented with some possible options that exist under the canons. Can you share a little bit about what the options the Standing Committee had?
Happy to. So we really got three options. One would be that the bishop remains in place and calls for the election of a bishop who will take over when they leave. And if there's overlap, the new bishop is called the bishop coadjutor. If there's no overlap, the newly elected bishop assumes the ecclesiastical authority and becomes the bishop diocesan. This wasn't going to happen in our case because we couldn't have this happen before the end of the year. Second option is that the bishop retires or resigns and the Standing Committee becomes the ecclesiastical authority. So we run the diocese by committee. That means we as elected volunteers, and there are 8 of us, would approve ordinations, do the clergy licensing and discipline and the other core canonical duties. You heard me gulp. That very overwhelming to the Standing Committee. And the third option that we talked about with Bishop Owsley from the Episcopal Church is that the bishop resigns or retires and the Standing Committee selects a bishop provisional to carry out the ecclesiastical duties of the bishop while the Standing Committee, and in our case, the Diocesan Council, oversee the search process for a new bishop diocesan. We chose to move forward with this way.
Yeah. So what were, I think I could intuit some of the reasons, but what were some of the reasons why that was the preferred choice?
Well, the first one was honestly that big gulp all of us took of thinking that trying to run the diocese for up to 2 years with a group of elected volunteers who also some will rotate off during that 2-year period. All of us have jobs in addition to our volunteer gigs, just felt overwhelming, and especially the canonical duties. The second thing that we were quite aware of is that the capacity of the governing bodies as a whole is pretty high. This diocese really does lean into our volunteer structure. And so we just felt that we couldn't ask everyone to take on a little bit more. And we wanted to make sure, this would be a third thing, that we were doing everything that we could to maintain canonically and the canonical and legally required obligations of the diocese. So this felt like the best solution.
Thanks for sharing that. So then the next thing I'm wondering about, and I'm sure other people are too, is if the Standing Committee selects a bishop provisional to accompany us in this work, what are the kinds of things that bishop provisional might do?
Well, a number of things. One of the things when we talked with Bishop Owsley that we were drawn to was that the bishop provisional actually also allows the diocese some breathing room and some time to have someone a little different than Bishop Rickel be with us. It kind of lays the groundwork for the new diocesan bishop to come in. So that was one thing that we were really drawn to, is who can we bring convince to come be our bishop provisional, who can really serve the diocese and help us continue to move forward. So that's one reason, or one thing that we were looking for when we interviewed. The second thing is that the bishop provisional, along with the assisting bishops, will continue liturgies that only a bishop can do. And I have to look at my list: visitations, confirmations, receptions, and the new and mutual ministry celebrations. The third thing, bishop provisional then still works with the governing bodies, the commissions on ministry, and the standing committee to keep the diocese running, and specifically working with the commission on ministry and standing committee to keep the ordination process moving forward. We don't want that to stall. And that was very important to not only the standing committee, but even when we talked with the bishop provisional candidates. So the last thing would be to make sure we stay financially sound. We are in great shape. I'm not worried, but we want to have someone who has who in working with the diocesan staff really can keep their thumb on what's going on and make sure that we don't get off track. Does that help, Arienne?
So I think the questions people have been asking me are sort of like, what might be disrupted or changed? So I think you shared how the really core elements of our common life might continue with this plan. So then this sounds like a great plan to me. What does our diocese need to do to accomplish this? I know the standing committee has taken some specific steps, but some of that work is going to come back to all of us.
Right. So I think some things we've already done. We've been in contact with, as I said, Bishop Owsley to talk about how do we go through the process of calling a diocesan bishop, and looking not only at the Episcopal Church Constitution and Canons, but the Diocese of Olympia Constitution and Canons, and kind of making sure we have a crosswalk to know how those two go together. So we've been working on that, and also really learning from Bishop Owsley, since we haven't had to do this for a long time. How do we do it? So that's one thing that we've been doing. We've chosen the path. We want to have a bishop provisional. We know that. And we are hoping that you at convention will agree with us. That's our goal. And then the last thing we did, or the thing we're doing in the midst of right now, is we interviewed candidates and we selected someone we think is going to be awesome for the Diocese of Olympia. And I just want to go back to something I didn't say earlier, Arienne, that I should have. We aren't trying to have the bishop provisional be Greg Rickel. This person will come in and really, we ask lots of questions. How will you hold our diocese together? And how will you help us move forward? How will you keep us on a path of our anti-racism work? How will you keep us moving forward? How will you maybe take us in some new paths for even just 2 years? Help nudge us forward while still taking care of us pastorally.
So then are there specific things that we as a body will need to do coming up? Or what I think too, a lot of people want to know, and when I work with congregations in transition, something that happens quite frequently is people really do want to help. They want to be a part of the good work that the leaders they trust are inviting them to do. So, I think it sounds like there's some specific actions at convention that we're going to be talking about. What
are we doing? Good question. What are we doing?
Some of it
we've done all this work, but it's not just standing committee, and it's not just the governing bodies. So it really is coming back now to convention. And the first thing is what we're really hoping that the convention body understands is the need for a bishop provisional. And so there will be a motion that is made by the standing committee to put the Diocese of Olympia under the purview of a bishop provisional. That it's an interesting thing, and I want to just talk about that a little bit.
Yeah.
The convention body will be voting to put the Diocese of Olympia under the charge of a bishop provisional, but you don't get to say, I like candidate A, I prefer candidate B. I'm going to be really honest. We have an outstanding candidate, and you're going to get to hear more about it in the person in the coming weeks. But understand that a bishop provisional coming in, they're giving up up to 2 years of their life, potentially relocating. They're not going to be the diocesan bishop. That's not the intent of having a bishop provisional. So it's not as if we had 50 possible bishops coming in to be bishop provisional. We aren't doing a mini search for a diocesan bishop. Now, why was I saying that? I got to think. Oh, because that's why at convention, the motion is to agree that we should have the Diocese of Olympia under a bishop provisional.
Which frees the standing committee to appoint that person?
Well, you'll hear all about it, and it's part of all of the appointment process.
Yeah.
It's just the motion to put us under the care of a bishop provisional is tied with the name of the person, not, hey, we want a bishop provisional, and now we're going to vote on 2 candidates and different ones. So what I'm hoping, and we're going to have a workshop at convention so that people can talk to the standing committee, talk to the candidate. We're going to have previews so that people can talk to the candidate via Zoom. But what we're really hoping is you can come talk to us about why we're doing the bishop provisional route rather than just, I wish you'd talk to so-and-so.
Yeah.
Does that make, and it's a fine line to understand. So that's going to happen at convention. What the standing committee would love to have happen is that as you have questions or concerns, please attend the various Zoom meetings that we're going to have. Come to the workshops, meet the bishop provisional candidate. If you're seeing this and you're not going to be at convention, please, there's an email that's going to come across the bottom of the screen, and we'd be happy to respond to your questions in advance of convention or at convention.
Thank you. So once, provided that we take this step and we call a bishop provisional or make that possible by act of convention, what other steps will be taking place after that, and how can people in diocese participate in this important work?
Well, that's a great question, because I think what everyone is thinking about is who is going to be the next diocesan bishop and bishop diocesan. And I understand that's scary to everyone. It's scary to us. We're just more scared and worried about getting a bishop provisional in first to take care of us until we have that. The next step is that, again, based on the canons for the Diocese of Olympia, the standing committee and the Diocesan Council, based on the canons for the Diocese of Olympia, the next step is for the standing committee and the Diocesan Council to meet and select 2, at least, well, there are going to be more, 3 probably, but 2 committees. The first one is a joint committee that has representatives from the standing committee and representatives from Diocesan Council, and that committee oversees the whole process. They will serve on that committee probably until we call our bishop diocesan. Then between the standing committee and the diocesan council, then we have to appoint a search committee. And the search committee is going to build a profile. They're going to work with a consultant to find our next diocesan bishop. The only thing we have to have is we do have to have one member from each regional ministry of the diocese who is on that committee. How we will then select people is still to be determined. So our 2 committees have not met yet. We will be doing that in the beginning of December. And one reason we're waiting is because we want all the elections of new members to standing committee and diocesan council to happen at convention, so that we have everyone who's the stakeholders that's there for that first and second meeting. So there'll probably be 2 meetings of those boards or those governing bodies.
That makes a lot of sense. So It makes sense because then we'll have them for the full time of their term that they can apply to this work. Won't lose anybody during that time.
That's our hope.
Fewer
Exactly.
people who are rolling off. So I think too, when I work with congregations in transition, in some way we're a big congregation, a diocese in transition now. One of the things that I always try and remind leaders that are in our position is that there's things that all of us could be doing to help. If we believe in the work of the diocese, the bishop leaving, that's a tough moment, but it's not the end of our time together. And there's still so much for us to do all the time, whether it's about the transition or just our common life. So, what I would invite all members of our diocese to continue doing is to keep praying.
Yes.
Meeting in worship, go to church. This is a good time to go to church and talk about our hopes for the future and what kind of ministry we want to take on together. This is a good time to continue supporting your congregation with time, talent, and treasure because this is an uncertain time for all of us, both like the wider economy and also just things happening in our diocese. So continuing to participate in all the ways that you have with our common life will help this transition be successful. One thing that'll hurt is if we all walk away right now when we really need to lean in and put our shoulders to the stone. So I'm excited.
I really hope no one's walking away. I know that it's scary and transitions are scary, but this is a time of great growth too, and a time to, as you said, lean in and be part of the future of the Diocese of Olympia. So thank you for saying that. We need that.
Thank you all for listening to this conversation. There's more conversation to be had, both at convention and again, you can contact members of the Standing Committee at the Standing Committee email address, or members of our office who can direct questions to the Standing Committee if you're not sure where to send those concerns or questions. Thank you, Diocese of Olympia, for your enduring faithfulness, and we're excited for the next few months working together.
Thank you.